Alright, this video is going to be for my Pajero Mini Turbo, folks. A lot of you have purchased these vehicles recently and done some maintenance on them. I don't know to what extent, but this is the extent that I go to when I purchase a used vehicle, because I want them to give me the longest possible hassle-free service life that I can have. We're talking about a 28-year-old vehicle that was imported here. All of the plastics, all of the hoses, everything under there is very brittle. You're going to have to be careful, and you're going to have to expect that there may or may not be a readily available part to replace the things that you break with. So be careful messing around in there. And if you want to learn how to clean your fuel injectors properly, that's what I'm going to show you now. I'll mention a few other things while we're in here, but that's what this video is about, is cleaning the fuel injectors. I think you're going to like how this turns out. This ought to look familiar. It's the engine inside of your Pajero Mini Turbo. Now, if you don't know how to get this far, I'm going to explain it for you briefly. All you have to do is remove the top mount intercooler. You're going to have 1, 2, 3 12mm bolts, and you're going to remove 3 clamps. One here, and one there. Okay? Be gentle as you go. 2 of those bolts fastened down to this bracket, which spans the top of the valve cover over top of the ignition coil, so careful in that area as well. 2 more 12mm bolts, pull that off. While you're in there, change your PCV valve. It's probably just as brittle as mine was. First things first, where I have the wrench here, you're going to remove the 10mm bolt that's there on the return line, and you're also going to remove, I guess maybe that's a pressure dampener or something. There's going to be 2 10mm bolts on that. You're looking right here. Once you've taken out the 3 10mm bolts that are holding that down, you can wiggle it out of there, and you're just going to set it up out of your way. While you have it out, inspect and check your O-ring here for damage, and make sure when you put that back in, if I don't mention it later, you lubricate this with something, a little bit of silicone. If you look down there in the back, you're going to see where fuel inlet is. There's 2 10mm bolts. The easiest way is probably going to be to use a short length extension with your 10mm socket on a ratchet to reach that. Once you've got those 2 10mm bolts removed, be mindful, I've got a catch pan down there. Gas is going to come out of here right now, so let's see if we can catch that on camera. Alright, so that wasn't too bad. I didn't have a lot of residual fuel pressure in there. So pull that off and tuck that carefully out of your way. Again, be careful of the O-ring. You don't want to damage the O-ring on here, and if it needs to be replaced, replace it. Now would be the time. Now the next step is we're going to have to release the clips from the fuel injectors. I don't want to repeat myself a million times, but again, very brittle. Very easy to break. Be careful. Easiest way to do this is with a set of picks. You can get these at any appliance hardware store. You know, if you have a Harbor Freight near you or something, you just want them cheap, you can get them. Alright, once you pop one loose with your pick, be careful not to lose it. I dropped mine behind there. It landed on the intake manifold. You're probably going to have the same issue. Don't lose them. You're going to need them. Then you're going to slide this off. There's going to be a rubber gasket that goes underneath there. I'll show you here. See that in there? Rubber. Sometimes that's going to fall off. Make sure you keep it in the same orientation and just use your pick and tuck it back down in there. Alright? Go ahead and pull your harness out of the way for the fuel injectors and set that to the back somehow. Careful again. And what we're left with here are, looks like 2 12mm bolts that we're going to remove. And the fuel rail should then be ready to pull out of there. Go ahead and switch over to your longer extension to make life a bit easier. You may be able to get your hand down behind the intake manifold on the left and go ahead and grab with your second hand here in the front on the right between the throttle cable. I'm just going to do this one-handed so you can see. It's all going to be loose, and there we go. The fuel rail is completely separated. The bushings that the fuel rail was sitting on top of are not permanently affixed. They come out, so you may want to remove them for now, just so that you don't drop them and lose them. At least this way you know. The easiest way may be to go ahead and use your little pick set and you're going to come down in here and you're going to pry out these rubber gaskets. Sometimes you have to get creative here. This might hurt a little bit, especially if you have big hands like I do. You may want to stick your hand here over the thermostat housing if your thermostat housing is removed. Sorry, mine's been removed to flush the whole cooling system out, but you can reach down in here, get your pick underneath the bushing, grab onto it, and just carefully slide it out of the way without losing any material. And there you have it. Alright, if you made it this far, congratulations. Now you're going to be working with your fuel rail. Removing the injectors from the rail is as simple as pushing down on these two tabs at the same time and pulling straight downwards. Okay, I can't do it with one hand, but that's what you end up with. Okay, now remove all 4 injectors. A few tools you're going to want to have for the next part here. Get yourself a 12-volt battery source. You can purchase one of these probably on Amazon or eBay. It's a fuel injector tester. It pulsates, okay? You can do short, medium, or long pulses, which is going to help us clean out our injectors. Don't use too much of this, but a can of brake clean, a rag perhaps. Get yourself some gloves. If you have shop air, you're going to need the shop air, or at least compressed air, to blow through the injectors. I have the fuel rail out here because we're going to spray that off and clean it up a little bit. Have our injectors set up. This is the important part. Carburetor parts cleaner. This is an oily type carburetor dip, and this can is quite old. You're not going to find this exact thing in the store anymore, but find carburetor parts cleaner, and that's what you're going to want to use, and a screwdriver to open can, of course. So right now we're going to connect our injector pulsator to our power source. Negative, negative, positive, positive. Doesn't matter how they go on the injector, it'll work either way. So we're going to put our little clips onto the posts on the injector. So we have that on our device here. We're going to choose our mode. Right now I'm just going to choose a long pulse, and just to see if I can show you what this is going to look like, the spray pattern from the stock injector without having cleaned it yet. Okay, so I'm just going to hit pulse here. You're not going to see anything happen because there's no pressure behind it, but I'm just testing it to make sure it works. You can probably hear that. Okay, so that's our confirmation. Now that's where our carburetor dip comes in. We're going to go ahead and submerge it just enough to get some carburetor cleaner into the top of the fuel injector, which is going to fill it up. Now if I hit pulse, okay, it dripped. That's good. That means something's coming out of it. That's what we want, all right? So we fill up our injector, and we'll put some air behind it. Once we hit, we're going to set it to continuous mode, and I'm going to try and show you the spray pattern here. Let's see if you can see it on camera. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but it was kind of all spraying off to one side. So we're going to fill up the injector again. We're going to hit continuous pulse, and we're going to spray it again. Now you're going to repeat this process on each injector until you get a finely atomized pattern, like I said. Now you can let it sit in there for a minute. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just pulsing away in there in the fluid, and it's sending some of the carburetor cleaner through the injector. Okay. I did remove the fuel filter also. which is located up on the frame behind the driver's side rear wheel. Okay, driver's side being right hand side of the vehicle, of course. This one is actually not that bad. I don't know whether it's original or not. It obviously is an original equipment one, but I don't know at what point in its life it was replaced, if ever. It looks really good considering. And if anything is worth doing, it's worth doing right. So I polished up the bodies of the injectors on the wire wheel, and then I hit them with a little bit of clear coat, high temperature clear coat. So when they go back in, they'll all be looking right. Like I said, if it's worth doing the right way. And this is the Holy Grail. That is a brand new, old stock Mikuni filter for Mitsubishi. That's part number MR161986. Good luck finding one. It took quite a while to find that. It popped up on eBay. It was over in the UK somewhere. Cost about $158 to have it sent here after winning the auction. That's total taxes, shipping, part cost, etc. But not cheap at all. So I'm going to reuse the 10mm bolts that fasten it onto the frame, and we'll be reusing this yellow retainer clip that holds the fuel line on there. And when you're done installing the new fuel filter, it's going to look something like that. Like I said, it lives inside the frame just in front of the right hand side rear wheel. Installation is just going to be the reverse of the uninstallation of the fuel injectors. So as you're putting the O-rings on the end and sliding them into the fuel rails, you're going to want to use something like this silicone lubricant just to make sure you don't have any binding or tearing going on of the new O-rings. Maybe put a dab of it on the end as you insert them down into the new bushing that goes right there where they enter the intake manifold. And at this point, if you're satisfied, you've double checked everything, go ahead and start the vehicle up, and you're going to want to shine a flashlight down here under the left side of the intercooler just to make sure that you don't have any leaks against the mating surfaces. I've already checked that and I do not. And beyond that, job well done. Enjoy your Pajero Mini Turbo.